The crimson sunset painted the Montana sky as Hannah Atwell stood at her husband's grave, the same plot of earth that had swallowed her dreams 3 years prior. At 35, she was considered a relic in Silver Creek, a woman whose time had passed, though her heart still beat with the same fervor as any young maiden's. "Another day of mourning won't bring him back, Hannah," came the snide voice of her brother-in-law, Thomas, who approached with his wife, Lucinda, in tow. "It's about time you accepted your lot." Hannah clutched her worn leather-bound journal to her chest, the pages filled with poetry and thoughts too precious to share with those who would only mock them. "I've accepted more than you know, Thomas. What you need to accept is that no man in this territory will look twice at a childless widow your age," Lucinda said, adjusting her lace bonnet with bejeweled fingers. "Why, you'll be 40 before you know it." Hannah bit her tongue. At 35, she was hardly ancient, though Silver Creek seemed to think otherwise. She'd been married at 18 to Jonathan Atwell, a kind man 15 years her senior who'd left her a modest ranch that Thomas had been eyeing since the funeral. "I'm perfectly content with my life," Hannah replied, though the words felt hollow. Thomas smirked. "Content to waste away on that ranch. The cattle are dying, the crops are failing, and you haven't the faintest idea how to manage it all. Be reasonable, Hannah. Sell to me before there's nothing left to sell." Hannah straightened her spine. "The ranch is all I have left of Jonathan. I won't part with it." "Stubborn as always," Lucinda sighed dramatically. "You'll change your mind when winter comes. No man to warm your bed, no children to bring you joy. It's a sorry existence for a woman." With a tight-lipped smile, Hannah turned away from the grave. "Good day to you both." As she walked the dusty path back to town, Hannah fought against the tears that threatened to fall. 3 years a widow, and still the pain of Jonathan's passing cut deep. Worse was the truth in Thomas's words: the ranch was failing. She'd tried everything, worked until her hands bled, but it wasn't enough. Silver Creek, Montana Territory, 1878, was no place for a woman alone. Hannah knew this as well as anyone, but pride kept her from admitting defeat. The town bustled with afternoon activity as she made her way to the general store. Silver Creek had grown considerably in the 10 years since she'd arrived as a bride, the discovery of silver in the nearby mountains bringing prosperity and people from all corners. Mrs. Atwell, Mr. Peterson, the store owner, greeted her warmly. "What can I help you with today?" "Just some coffee and flour, please," Hannah said, counting out her coins carefully. "And perhaps some sugar, if I can afford it." Mr. Peterson's kind eyes crinkled with concern. "Hard times up at the ranch," Hannah nodded. "The cattle have been sickly and the wells running dry. I've been hauling water from the creek, but it's not enough for the crops." "Have you considered selling? I hear Thomas has made quite an offer." Hannah's jaw tightened. News travels fast. "It's a small town," Mr. Peterson shrugged, wrapping her purchases in brown paper. "No offense meant, Mrs. Atwell, but a woman alone. It's difficult, especially with no children to help." Another reminder of her failure. She and Jonathan had tried for years to have a child, but it wasn't to be. Now her barrenness was just another mark against her, another reason she was considered less than whole. "I'll manage," Hannah said firmly, taking her parcel. "I always do." As she stepped back onto the boardwalk, a commotion at the far end of the street caught her attention. A group of cowboys had ridden in, trail-worn and dusty, leading a herd of cattle toward the stockyards. New faces were always of interest in Silver Creek, and Hannah found herself watching as one rider separated from the group, heading toward the saloon. He sat tall in the saddle, broad-shouldered and confident. Even from a distance, Hannah could see he was younger than most trail bosses, perhaps early 30s, with a determined set to his jaw beneath the shadow of his hat. Something about the way he carried himself made her pause, a strange fluttering in her chest that she quickly dismissed as foolishness. Turning away, Hannah headed for home, her small wagon and aging mare waiting patiently at the hitching post. The 5-mile journey to her ranch stretched before her, and she needed to start if she hoped to reach home before dark. As she untied her mare, a voice called out, "Madam, you dropped this." Hannah turned to find the cowboy from the cattle drive standing behind her, holding her journal. Her heart stopped. She must have dropped it when gathering her packages. "Oh, thank you," she said, reaching for it with embarrassment. Had he read any of it? The thought mortified her. He handed it over with a smile that transformed his weather-beaten face. Up close, his eyes were a startling blue, crinkling at the corners as if he smiled often. Seemed important, wouldn't want it getting trampled in the street. "It is, thank you, Mr. West, Wyatt West." He tipped his hat. "Just arrived with a herd from Wyoming." "Hannah Atwell," she replied, tucking the journal safely into her wagon. "Welcome to Silver Creek. Much obliged." His gaze lingered on her face, making Hannah acutely aware of the wisps of gray beginning to thread through her chestnut hair. "You heading out of town alone, Mrs. Atwell? Sun's getting low." "I've made the journey countless times," Hannah said, surprised by the concern in his voice. "My ranch is just beyond Miller's Creek." Wyatt glanced at the sky. "Still, these roads can be dangerous after dark. Wouldn't mind riding along if you'd permit it." Hannah hesitated. She wasn't accustomed to male attention anymore, especially not from a handsome stranger. "That's kind, but unnecessary. I wouldn't want to keep you from your rest after a long drive." "Rest can wait," Wyatt said. "Been in the saddle for weeks, a few more miles won't make a difference." Before Hannah could protest further, Thomas appeared, eyeing Wyatt with suspicion. "Hannah, I see you've met one of our visitors." He extended his hand to Wyatt. "Thomas Atwell, owner of the Silver Spur Ranch." "Wyatt West," the cowboy replied, shaking Thomas's hand firmly. "Just delivered 200 head to your stockyard, in fact." Thomas's demeanor changed instantly. "Ah, the Wyoming herd, fine cattle, Mr. West, very fine indeed." He glanced at Hannah. "I see you've met my sister-in-law. Poor thing's been struggling with her little ranch since my brother passed. Stubborn as a mule about selling, though." Hannah felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Thomas, please, no shame in admitting when you're beaten, Hannah," Thomas continued. "A woman your age should be focusing on comfort, not breaking her back on a failing ranch." Wyatt's expression remained neutral, but something flashed in his eyes. "Age seems a poor measure of capability, Mr. Atwell," Thomas laughed. "Perhaps in Wyoming. Here in Silver Creek, we understand the natural order of things. A woman Hannah's age without a husband or children has missed her purpose, wouldn't you agree?" Hannah wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. She'd grown accustomed to Thomas's casual cruelty, but having it displayed before a stranger was unbearable. To her surprise, Wyatt's face hardened. "I find that women often have purposes far beyond what small-minded men can comprehend, Mr. Atwell." Thomas's smile faltered. "You're entitled to your opinion, Mr. West, misguided as it may be. Now, if you'll excuse us, I was just about to discuss business with my sister-in-law." "Actually," Hannah interjected, finding courage in Wyatt's unexpected defense, "Mr. West has offered to escort me home, and I've accepted." Thomas's eyes narrowed. "Has he now? Well, I suppose that saves me the trouble of sending one of my hands to check on you." He turned to Wyatt. "Though I should warn you, Mr. West, my sister-in-law's place is hardly worth the journey. Dried-up land and sickly cattle, nothing a man of your caliber would find interesting." "I'll be the judge of that," Wyatt replied evenly. "Madam, if you're ready." Hannah nodded, climbing onto her wagon seat with more grace than she felt. Wyatt mounted his horse, a magnificent chestnut gelding that made her old mare look particularly pitiful. As they left town, Hannah felt Thomas's eyes boring into her back, his disapproval a tangible weight. They traveled in silence for the first mile, the rhythmic clop of hooves and creak of wagon wheels the only sounds between them. Finally, Hannah spoke. "I apologize for my brother-in-law. He can be difficult." Wyatt rode alongside the wagon, his posture relaxed. "No need to apologize for him. Men like that exist everywhere." "Still, what he said about me was cruel and untrue," Wyatt finished. "I've found that those who judge most harshly usually have the most to hide." Hannah smiled despite herself. "That's a generous perspective, not generous, just experience. He glanced at her. How long have you been running your ranch alone? 3 years. My husband, Jonathan, died suddenly. Heart trouble, the doctor said. I'm sorry for your loss. The simple sincerity in his voice touched her. Thank you, it's been challenging. The land was never particularly fertile, but Jonathan knew how to coax life from it. I've tried to follow his methods, but you've had to learn the hard way, Wyatt nodded. Ranching's tough enough with help. Alone, it's nearly impossible. Hannah sighed. Thomas reminds me of that regularly. He's been trying to buy the land since the funeral, says it's what Jonathan would have wanted. And what do you think Jonathan would have wanted? The question caught her off guard. Few people bothered to ask what she thought anymore. I think he would have wanted me to be happy. The ranch was his dream, not mine, but it's become home. I'm not ready to give up on it yet, even if everyone else thinks I should. Wyatt nodded thoughtfully. Dreams have a way of changing hands sometimes, becoming something new. They crested a hill, and Hannah's property came into view below. The small ranch house sat nestled against a backdrop of pine trees, a modest barn and corral beside it. The pastures, once green and thriving, now looked patchy and worn. A dozen cattle grazed listlessly near the dried-up pond. It's not much, Hannah said, suddenly self-conscious about the property's condition. But it's mine. Wyatt surveyed the land with a practiced eye. Good positioning. Natural windbreak from those trees. How many acres? 120. About 20 are good for crops when there's enough water. As they approached the house, Hannah noticed Wyatt studying the well and irrigation channels. His expression revealed nothing, but she sensed he was making assessments. Thank you for the escort, Mr. West, Hannah said as she pulled the wagon to a stop before her porch. It wasn't necessary, but I appreciate the company. Wyatt dismounted, coming around to help her down from the wagon. His hands at her waist were strong and sure, and for a brief moment, Hannah was acutely aware of how long it had been since a man had touched her, even in such an innocent fashion. My pleasure, Mrs. Atwell. He released her quickly, as if sensing her discomfort. Would you mind if I watered my horse before heading back? Of course, Hannah said, gesturing toward the pump. Please help yourself. While Wyatt tended to his horse, Hannah unloaded her purchases, carrying them into the small house. The interior was neat but worn, with simple furniture and few luxuries. Jonathan had never been one for extravagance, and Hannah had maintained his practical approach. When she returned outside, Wyatt was examining the well pump with a frown. When did this start running dry? About 6 months ago, Hannah replied. It gets worse every week. I've been hauling water from the creek, but it's not enough for the cattle and crops both. Wyatt knelt, inspecting the pump mechanism more closely. Mind if I take a look at your well? Please, go ahead. Though I warn you, everyone in town has had a theory. None have panned out. With a nod, Wyatt removed his hat and jacket, rolling up his sleeves to reveal tanned, muscular forearms. Hannah found herself watching as he worked, methodically examining the well's construction and testing the water level. After several minutes, he straightened. Your water table hasn't dropped. The problem is here. He pointed to a section of the well shaft. The casing has collapsed, restricting flow. It's fixable. Hope fluttered in Hannah's chest, quickly tempered by pragmatism. Fixable, but at what cost? I don't have money for major repairs. Materials wouldn't be expensive, mainly requires labor. Wyatt replaced his hat. I could help if you'd allow it. Hannah stared at him, bewildered. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. I know enough, Wyatt said simply. I've been looking for a place to settle after this cattle drive, planned to scout the area before making decisions. Helping you would give me a chance to get to know the land, and you'd get your well fixed. Seems fair. Hannah hesitated. Having a stranger around, especially a man, would set tongues wagging in Silver Creek. On the other hand, without water, her ranch wouldn't survive another month. I couldn't pay you much, she admitted. Room and board would suffice for now. His blue eyes held her steadily. I'm a fair hand with cattle too, could help get your herd healthier while I'm at it. It was too good to be true. Men didn't offer help without expecting something in return. That was a lesson life had taught her well. "And what would you want in exchange, Mr. West?" His expression softened. "Just a chance, Mrs. Atwell, same as anyone." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Against her better judgment, Hannah found herself nodding. "All right, Mr. West, you can stay in the bunkhouse. It's small, but it's clean." "That's more than fair," he smiled, and Hannah felt that strange flutter in her chest again. "I'll need to settle accounts in town first." Would tomorrow morning be suitable to start? Yes, that would be fine. Hannah felt suddenly nervous, as if she'd made a momentous decision without fully understanding its implications. I should warn you though, people will talk. A widow living alone with a single man, it's not considered proper. Wyatt's eyes crinkled with amusement. "I've never put much stock in what's proper, Mrs. Atwell, but I respect your reputation. I'll make sure no one has reason to gossip." With that assurance, he mounted his horse, tipping his hat once more. "Until tomorrow, then." Hannah watched him ride away, his straight back silhouetted against the setting sun. She couldn't explain the lightness in her heart or the nervous anticipation coursing through her veins. It had been so long since she'd felt anything but weary determination. For the first time in 3 years, Hannah Atwell went to sleep with something new and fragile blooming in her chest: hope. The following morning, Hannah rose before dawn, as was her custom. She moved through her chores with nervous energy, feeding her chickens and milking her single cow before the sun had fully crested the horizon. By the time she'd prepared a hearty breakfast of biscuits, eggs, and bacon, doubt had begun to creep in. Would Wyatt West actually return? He'd seemed sincere, but Hannah had learned that men's promises often evaporated in the light of day. Perhaps he'd reconsidered after seeing the true state of her ranch, or maybe Thomas had warned him away with tales of the stubborn widow. When hoofbeats sounded on the path just after 7, Hannah's heart leapt. She smoothed her apron and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, annoyed at her own girlish reaction. Wyatt arrived leading a packhorse laden with supplies in addition to his own mount. He wore clean clothes, his dark hair damp from a recent washing. The morning light revealed details she'd missed the previous evening: a small scar cutting through his right eyebrow, laugh lines around his mouth, a day's growth of beard shadowing his jaw. "Good morning, Mrs. Atwell," he called, dismounting with easy grace. "Hope I'm not too early." "Not at all," Hannah replied, stepping onto the porch. "I've been up for hours. There's breakfast if you're hungry." "Much obliged." He began unloading supplies: lumber, tools, lengths of pipe. "Brought what we'll need for the well. Figured we'd get started right away." Hannah stared at the materials. "You purchased all this. I'll reimburse you, of course, though it might take some time." Wyatt waved away her concern. "Consider it an investment. Got a good price from the mercantile." He didn't mention that he'd paid double to rush the order, or that he'd spent nearly all his cattle drive earnings on the supplies. Over breakfast, Wyatt outlined his plan for repairing the well and improving the irrigation to her fields. Hannah listened, impressed by his knowledge and practical approach. "How do you know so much about wells?" she asked as she poured him a second cup of coffee. "My father was a well digger back in Kansas," Wyatt explained. "I grew up learning the trade before I took to cattle driving. Water's the lifeblood of any ranch. Find it, manage it properly, and everything else follows." "And cattle driving, how did you come to that?" A shadow crossed his face briefly. "After the war, I needed to move on. Cattle drives let a man see the country, make decent money, and keep moving." Hannah noted the mention of the war but didn't press. Many men still carried those wounds, visible and invisible. "And now you're looking to settle," Wyatt nodded, his blue eyes meeting hers. "Been driving cattle for 12 years. I'm 34 now, time to put down roots before I'm too old to enjoy them." 34. Only a year younger than herself, though the life of a cowboy had weathered him differently than her years as a rancher's wife had shaped her. Still, it was refreshing to meet a man who didn't treat his age as a handicap. "Well, Mr. West, I'm grateful for your help, however long you choose to stay." Wyatt, please, he said. If we're going to be working together, formalities seem unnecessary. Hannah hesitated. Using his given name seemed overly familiar, a step toward an intimacy she wasn't sure she was ready for. Very well, Wyatt, and you may call me Hannah. His smile warmed something long cold inside her. Hannah, it suits you. They began work immediately after breakfast. Hannah insisted on helping, and Wyatt, unlike most men she'd known, didn't patronize her or attempt to shield her from the hard labor. Instead, he gave clear instructions and trusted her to carry them out. By midday, they had dismantled the upper portion of the well and were preparing to extract the damaged section of casing. The sun beat down mercilessly, and both were streaked with dirt and sweat. We should take a break, Hannah said, noticing Wyatt's shirt was soaked through. I've prepared some lunch. Just a few more minutes, Wyatt replied, focused on securing a rope around a section of pipe. Almost got this piece ready to pull. Hannah shook her head, smiling despite herself. His determination reminded her of Jonathan, who would often work through meals when a task had captured his attention. When they finally broke for lunch, cold chicken, bread, and apple preserves eaten in the shade of the porch, Hannah found herself studying Wyatt's hands. They were strong and capable, with calluses that spoke of years of hard work, yet there was a gentleness to them as well. Tell me about Wyoming, she said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. Is it very different from Montana? Wyatt considered the question. Similar in many ways. Big sky, mountains, good grazing land, but each place has its own character. He glanced at her. What about you? Have you always been in Montana? Hannah shook her head. I grew up in Missouri, came here as a bride at 18. Jonathan was passing through St. Louis on business when we met. He was 33 then, established with his ranch, looking for a wife. She smiled at the memory. My parents thought I was making a fine match, an older, stable man with property. Were they right? The question was asked gently, without judgment. Hannah considered it carefully. Jonathan was a good man, kind, hardworking, honorable. He taught me about ranching, treated me with respect. We had a comfortable partnership. But, Wyatt prompted, sensing what remained unsaid. Hannah looked away, uncomfortable with his perception. There is no but. I was fortunate. Many women have far worse marriages. Wyatt didn't press further, but his eyes held understanding that made Hannah feel strangely exposed. She'd never admitted to anyone, not even herself, that while she'd respected and cared deeply for Jonathan, the passionate love described in her novels had remained elusive. After lunch, they returned to work. By sunset, they'd removed the damaged section of casing and prepared the replacement Wyatt had brought. Tomorrow would see the installation and, hopefully, the restoration of her water supply. As dusk fell, Hannah showed Wyatt to the small bunkhouse where Jonathan's occasional hired hands had once stayed. It was simple but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and small wood stove. It's not much, Hannah apologized, lighting the lamp on the table. It's perfect, Wyatt assured her. Better than most places I've laid my head these past years. Hannah lingered in the doorway, suddenly awkward. Well, good night then. I usually serve breakfast at 6 if that's not too early. I'll be up, Wyatt promised. Then, more softly, thank you, Hannah, for trusting me enough to let me help. The sincerity in his voice touched her. Thank you for offering when no one else would. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary before Hannah turned and hurried back to her empty house, her heart beating a strange rhythm she hadn't felt in years. Over the next week, Wyatt repaired the well, and water flowed abundantly once more. True to his word, he then turned his attention to her cattle, identifying which were worth saving and which were too far gone. He mended fences, repaired the barn roof, and helped Hannah replant a section of her vegetable garden that had withered in the drought. Working alongside him each day, Hannah found herself laughing more than she had in years. Wyatt had a dry wit and an endless supply of stories from his travels. More importantly, he treated her as an equal partner in the work, respecting her knowledge of the land and never once suggesting she was incapable because of her sex or age. In the evenings, they would sit on her porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. Sometimes they talked, other times, they simply enjoyed the comfortable silence between them. Hannah couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so at ease in another's company. One evening, as they shelled peas from her rejuvenated garden, Wyatt asked about her journal. "I noticed you write in it most nights, been curious since I first saw it in town." Hannah felt her cheeks warm. "It's nothing interesting, just thoughts mostly, some poetry." "You write poetry?" His interest seemed genuine, not mocking. "Try to, at least." Jonathan always thought it was a frivolous pastime, but she shrugged. "It helps me make sense of things, I suppose. Would you share some, if it's not too personal, that is?" Hannah hesitated. No one had ever asked to hear her poetry before. "They're not very good." "I'd still like to hear them," Wyatt said gently, "if you're willing." Something in his eyes gave her courage. Hannah retrieved her journal from the house, settling back on the porch swing beside him. She thumbed through the pages, finding a poem she'd written the previous spring. "This one's called Awakening," she said, then began to read. "The land lies sleeping beneath winter's shroud, dreams frozen in time, silent and proud. But beneath the ice, life stirs anew, waiting for spring to break through. I too have slumbered through seasons long, heart encased in grief, a mournful song, yet something whispers beneath the pain a promise that I might bloom again." She stopped, suddenly self-conscious. "That's all. Like I said, it's not very good." Wyatt was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the distant mountains. "It's beautiful," he finally said, his voice husky with emotion. "And brave, takes courage to acknowledge the possibility of blooming again." Hannah's throat tightened at the understanding in his words. "Does it?" "Sometimes it feels more like betrayal." "Of Jonathan," she nodded, "to even think of happiness, of a life beyond grief, as if moving forward somehow diminishes what we had." "I don't believe that's true," Wyatt said softly. "Honoring someone's memory doesn't mean stopping your own life. I think the greatest tribute to love is allowing it to change you, then carrying those changes forward." His words resonated deeply, touching a truth Hannah had been afraid to acknowledge. "When did cowboys become philosophers?" she asked, attempting lightness despite the tears threatening to fall. Wyatt smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Lots of time to think on the trail, stars above, cattle snoring, nothing but your thoughts for company." He hesitated, then added, "I lost someone too, my wife, Catherine, childbirth fever 8 years ago." Hannah's heart constricted with sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Wyatt." She was 22, we'd been married barely a year. His voice was steady, but pain shadowed his eyes. "That's when I took to the trails, couldn't bear to stay in one place with all those memories." "And now," Hannah asked softly, "what's changed?" Wyatt's gaze met hers, something unspoken passing between them. "Maybe I'm finally ready to bloom again too." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with possibility. For a heart-stopping moment, Hannah thought Wyatt might lean closer, might bridge the small distance between them on the swing. Instead, he gently closed her journal and handed it back. "Thank you for sharing your poetry," he said. "I hope you'll read me more someday." "I'd like that," Hannah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The next morning, Thomas Atwell rode into the yard just as Hannah and Wyatt were finishing breakfast. Through the window, Hannah saw her brother-in-law's expression darken at the sight of Wyatt's horse still tethered by the bunkhouse. "Trouble," she murmured, setting down her coffee cup. Wyatt followed her gaze. "Want me to make myself scarce?" Hannah straightened her shoulders. "No. This is my property, and you're here at my invitation. Thomas has no say in the matter." When she opened the door to greet her brother-in-law, Thomas didn't bother with pleasantries. "So the rumors are true," he said, dismounting with a scowl. "You've taken in a drifter." "Good morning to you too, Thomas," Hannah replied evenly. "Mr. West is helping with repairs around the ranch." "I'm sure he is," Thomas sneered, his gaze shifting to Wyatt, who had appeared in the doorway behind Hannah. "Tell me, West, what exactly are your intentions toward my brother's widow?" Wyatt stepped forward, his manner calm but resolute. My intentions are to help Mrs. Atwell get her ranch back in working order, Mr. Atwell. Nothing more, nothing less. Thomas laughed without humor. A cowboy with a conscience, that's rich. He turned back to Hannah. Do you have any idea what people in town are saying? A respectable widow, living alone with a man not her husband, it's scandalous. Hannah felt heat rise to her cheeks but held her ground. Mr. West stays in the bunkhouse. There's nothing improper about our arrangement. Appearances matter, Hannah. Jonathan would be horrified to see you throwing away your reputation for, what, some temporary repairs. Thomas's voice dripped with condescension. If you needed help, you should have come to me. Like I did last spring, Hannah countered. When you offered to send one of your hands to fix my roof, then charged me 3 times what it was worth. Thomas had the grace to look momentarily abashed, but quickly recovered. Business is business, family is family. I'm trying to protect you. No, you're trying to pressure me into selling, Hannah said, her patience wearing thin. Mr. West has repaired my well, mended my fences, and helped cull my herd. The ranch is already doing better than it has in a year, no thanks to you. Thomas's face reddened. And what payment is he expecting for these services? Men like him don't work for free, Hannah. You're being naive. Before Hannah could respond, Wyatt stepped forward, his voice dangerously quiet. I'd be careful with what you're implying, Mr. Atwell. Thomas stood his ground, though Hannah noticed he took a subtle step backward. I'm implying nothing. I'm stating facts. Drifters don't suddenly develop charitable impulses. You want something the land, or... His gaze traveled insultingly over Hannah. Other compensation. Wyatt's hands clenched at his sides, but when he spoke, his voice remained controlled. Mrs. Atwell has offered me room and board in exchange for my labor, a fair arrangement between adults. Your approval isn't required. Maybe not, Thomas conceded, but I wonder what the bank would say about her mounting debts. As her nearest male relative, I have some influence there. Hannah paled. You wouldn't. I'm trying to help you, Hannah. This infatuation with a stranger is clouding your judgment. The ranch is failing. Jonathan would want you provided for, not struggling to maintain his dream at the cost of your reputation and security. Jonathan would want me happy, Hannah said firmly. And for the first time since his death, I am finding some measure of peace here. The ranch is improving, not failing. Thomas scoffed. Because you've enticed some cowboy to do the work Jonathan would have done. It's not sustainable, Hannah. West will move on men like him always do, and you'll be left with nothing but gossip and debts. Wyatt stepped closer to Hannah, not touching her but offering his presence as support. Mr. Atwell, I understand your concern for your sister-in-law, but your methods leave something to be desired. If you truly wanted to help, you'd offer fair prices for her cattle or assistance without strings attached. This doesn't concern you, West, Thomas snapped. It concerns me when you insult a lady in my presence, Wyatt replied evenly. Mrs. Atwell has shown more courage and determination than most men I've known. She deserves respect, not condescension. Thomas looked between them, his expression calculating. I see how it is. Well, don't say I didn't warn you, Hannah. When this drifter moves on and leaves you in a worse state than before, don't come crying to me. He mounted his horse with ill-concealed anger. I'll be in town when you're ready to be reasonable about selling. They watched him ride away, dust billowing behind his horse. Only when he disappeared over the rise did Hannah release the breath she'd been holding. I'm sorry about that, she said, mortified by her brother-in-law's behavior. Don't apologize for him, Wyatt said gently. You handled yourself admirably. Hannah laughed without humor. Did I? All I could think was how Jonathan would have handled it so much better. He never let Thomas bully him. You didn't let him bully you either, Wyatt pointed out. You stood your ground. Thanks to your presence, Hannah admitted. I'm not usually so brave. Wyatt studied her face. I think you're braver than you know, Hannah Atwell. The way he said her name with such warmth and respect made her heart flutter traitorously. She turned toward the house to hide her reaction. We should get back to work. Those fence posts won't set themselves. As she walked away, Hannah couldn't shake Thomas's words about Wyatt eventually moving on. Of course he would. Men like Wyatt West didn't settle down with widows 6 months their senior. He'd help her get the ranch in order, then continue his search for his own place. It was foolish to imagine anything more. The thought brought an unexpected ache to her chest, one she wasn't ready to examine too closely. Over the next 2 weeks, the ranch transformed under their combined efforts. The well provided abundant water, allowing Hannah to irrigate her vegetable garden and the small apple orchard Jonathan had planted as a wedding gift. The healthier cattle began to put on weight, and Wyatt taught Hannah how to identify early signs of illness in the herd. Word of Hannah's improved circumstances spread through Silver Creek, and so did gossip about her arrangement with Wyatt. When Hannah went to town for supplies, she noticed the sideways glances and hushed conversations that stopped when she approached. Mrs. Peterson, the mercantile owner's wife, was particularly cool, her usual friendly greeting replaced with tight-lipped politeness. "Don't let it trouble you," Mr. Peterson said kindly as he loaded Hannah's purchases into her wagon. "People always need something to talk about. It'll pass." "I know," Hannah sighed. "I just wish they'd find someone else to discuss. For what it's worth," Mr. Peterson added, lowering his voice, "West seems a decent sort. Paid top dollar for those well supplies, insisted on the best quality. Said something about not cutting corners on what keeps life flowing." Hannah smiled despite herself. That sounded like Wyatt. As she prepared to leave town, Hannah spotted Lucinda Atwell emerging from the milliner's shop. Thomas's wife made a beeline for Hannah's wagon, her expensive skirts rustling with her determined stride. "Hannah, dear," Lucinda said, her voice saccharine. "I've been hoping to catch you. It's been ages since you've joined us for dinner." "I've been quite busy with the ranch," Hannah replied cautiously, "so I've heard." Lucinda's painted lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The whole town is talking about your helper. Thomas is beside himself with worry for your reputation." "That's very considerate of Thomas," Hannah said dryly, "but my reputation is my own concern." Lucinda leaned closer, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Hannah, you must know how this looks. A man like that, so handsome, so much younger, staying at your ranch. People are making assumptions." "He's 1 year younger than me, Lucinda," Hannah corrected. "Not that it's anyone's business, and he stays in the bunkhouse." Lucinda's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose. "Is that so? Well, that's not what I heard from Betsy Wilson. She claims she saw you two sitting mighty close on your porch swing after dark." Hannah felt heat rise to her cheeks. Betsy Wilson lived 3 miles away. She would have had to make a special trip just to spy on them. "Mr. West and I sometimes discuss the next day's work in the evening." "Nothing improper has occurred, if you say so, dear." Lucinda's tone made it clear she didn't believe a word. "I just thought you should know what people are saying. For a woman your age, reputation is all you have left." The casual cruelty of the remark stung, but Hannah refused to show it. "Thank you for your concern, Lucinda. I should be getting back. There's much to do before sundown." As she drove out of town, Hannah's composure crumbled. Tears of frustration burned her eyes. Why did everyone insist on treating her as if she were either pathetic or scandalous? Was it so hard to believe that a man might respect her, might value her company without ulterior motives? And yet, if she were honest with herself, Hannah knew her feelings for Wyatt had grown beyond simple gratitude or friendship. Each morning, she found herself taking extra care with her appearance before breakfast. Each evening, she looked forward to their conversations on the porch with an anticipation that both thrilled and frightened her. When she returned to the ranch, Hannah found Wyatt splitting firewood, his shirt clinging to his back with sweat. He paused mid-swing when he saw her, his face lighting with a smile that made her heart skip. "How was town?" he asked, setting down the axe and coming to help with the supplies. "Illuminating," Hannah replied, trying to keep her tone light. "Apparently we're the main topic of conversation in Silver Creek." Wyatt's expression sobered. "I feared as much. I'm sorry if I've caused you trouble." You haven't done anything wrong, Hannah assured him. People will always talk. It's the privilege of small towns. They unloaded the supplies in companionable silence, but Hannah could sense Wyatt had something on his mind. Finally, as they carried the last sacks of flour into the pantry, he spoke. I've been thinking, Hannah, maybe it's time I moved on. The words hit her like a physical blow. She turned away, busying herself with arranging cans on a shelf to hide her reaction. Oh, have you found land you want to purchase? Not exactly. Wyatt leaned against the doorframe, his expression troubled. I just don't want to be the cause of difficulties for you. Your reputation, my reputation, Hannah interrupted, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice, has been a topic of discussion since Jonathan died. First, I was pitied as the childless widow. Then I was mocked as the stubborn woman who wouldn't know her place. Now I'm scandalized for accepting help from a man who isn't family. She turned to face him, suddenly angry. No matter what I do, this town will find reason to talk. I'm tired of living my life to appease their sensibilities. Wyatt's eyes widened slightly at her vehemence, then softened with understanding. You're right, I apologize. Don't apologize, Hannah sighed, her anger deflating as quickly as it had risen. I don't want you to leave because of gossip. The ranch is doing better than it has in years, thanks to you. Is that the only reason? Wyatt asked quietly. The question hung between them, laden with meaning. Hannah met his gaze, her heart pounding. No, she admitted. It's not. Wyatt took a step toward her, then hesitated. Hannah, I need to be honest with you. When I offered to help with your ranch, my intentions were good but simple. I needed a place to stay while I scouted land, and you needed help. I never expected. He ran a hand through his hair, uncharacteristically uncertain. I never expected to feel this way about you. Hannah's breath caught. What way is that? Like I found something I didn't know I was looking for. His blue eyes held hers, open and vulnerable. Every day I spend with you makes the thought of leaving more impossible. Hope and fear warred within Hannah's heart. Wyatt, I'm 6 months older than you. I can't have children. I'm a widow with a struggling ranch and a reputation that's hanging by a thread. What could you possibly want with me? Wyatt closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. His touch was warm, calloused, and impossibly gentle. Everything, he said simply. Your strength, your poetry, your laughter, the way you face each day with courage, even when it would be easier to give up. You're the most remarkable woman I've ever known, Hannah Atwell. Tears blurred Hannah's vision. You barely know me. I know enough, Wyatt said softly. I know that waking up each morning on this ranch, knowing I'll see you, is the happiest I've been in 8 years. I know that when I think about my future, I can't imagine it without you in it. People will talk, Hannah whispered, even as she leaned imperceptibly closer. Let them, Wyatt murmured, his gaze dropping to her lips. The only opinion that matters to me is yours. When his lips finally met hers, Hannah felt as if the world had suddenly righted itself after years of being slightly askew. The kiss was tender, questioning at first, then deepening as she responded. Wyatt's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer, and Hannah found herself clinging to his shoulders, years of loneliness melting away in the warmth of his embrace. When they finally parted, both breathless, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the first evening on your porch, he confessed. Hannah smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. I've wanted you to. The admission seemed to please him greatly. His thumb gently traced the curve of her cheek. I don't want to rush you, Hannah. I know you've had loss, and so have I. We can take this slowly, see where it leads. Hannah nodded, though part of her wanted to throw caution to the wind. At 35, with the whispers of Silver Creek ringing in her ears, patience seemed a luxury she could ill afford. Yet Wyatt's respect for her feelings only confirmed what she already knew: he was a man worth waiting for. Slowly, she agreed, though perhaps not too slowly. His answering laugh warmed her from within. I've never been accused of being overly patient myself. That evening they sat closer than usual on the porch swing. Hannah's head eventually coming to rest on Wyatt's shoulder as the stars emerged above them. They talked of their pasts, Hannah's sheltered upbringing in Missouri, Wyatt's childhood in Kansas, their respective marriages and losses. There was comfort in their shared experiences, a mutual understanding that required no explanation. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier," Wyatt murmured, his hand entwined with hers, "about not being able to have children." Hannah tensed slightly. "It's true. Jonathan and I tried for years. The doctor eventually said it wasn't meant to be." "That doesn't matter to me," Wyatt said gently. "I loved Catherine deeply, and yes, I grieved the child we lost with her, but life has taught me that family comes in many forms if you and I were to build a life together, I'd be content with just us." His words eased a fear Hannah hadn't fully acknowledged. Truly, most men want sons to carry on their name, their legacy. "Most men haven't seen what I've seen," Wyatt replied thoughtfully. "After the war, I spent time with the Cheyenne. They taught me that family is about who you choose to love, not just blood. Children who lost parents were taken in, cherished as their own. Elders without children were never left alone." He squeezed her hand. "Legacy isn't just about sons and daughters. It's about how you live, who you help along the way." Hannah turned to study his face in the moonlight. "You're not like any man I've ever known, Wyatt West." He smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "Decidedly good," Hannah assured him, reaching up to touch his cheek. "Though it makes me wonder why you've chosen to bestow your attention on me when you could have any young woman in the territory." Wyatt's expression grew serious. "Hannah, when will you understand? I don't want any young woman. I want the woman who reads poetry on her porch at sunset, who faces down her arrogant brother-in-law with quiet dignity, who works beside me without complaint even when the task is difficult." His hand cupped her face. "I want you just as you are." When he kissed her again, Hannah allowed herself to believe him. The following Sunday, Hannah and Wyatt attended church together in Silver Creek. It was a bold statement in a town already buzzing with gossip, but Hannah had decided she was through with hiding. They rode in her wagon side by side, Wyatt smartly dressed in his best shirt, and Hannah wearing a blue dress she hadn't worn since before Jonathan's death. The congregation's reaction was predictable. Heads turned as they entered, whispers following them to their seat. Thomas and Lucinda, from their prominent pew near the front, looked scandalized. Hannah held her head high, though her hand trembled slightly in the crook of Wyatt's arm. "Steady," he murmured, covering her hand with his. "Remember, we have nothing to be ashamed of." The service proceeded normally, though Hannah felt the weight of stares throughout. Reverend Clark's sermon on judgment and forgiveness seemed particularly pointed, though whether it was coincidence or design, Hannah couldn't say. When the service ended, Hannah braced herself for the social ordeal of exiting the church. To her surprise, it was Wyatt who was approached first by a group of men she recognized as local ranchers. "West," called Samuel Burton, owner of the Double B Ranch north of town. "Heard you've got the Atwell place producing again. That true?" Wyatt nodded, keeping Hannah at his side. "Mrs. Atwell's land has good potential, just needed some attention. That well system you rigged up Peterson was telling me about it. Sounds ingenious." Burton seemed genuinely interested. "My north pasture has been running dry for 2 seasons. Might be willing to pay for your expertise if you're offering." Hannah watched, amazed, as other ranchers joined the conversation, asking Wyatt's opinion on water management and cattle breeding. His knowledge was evident, his manner confident without being boastful. These men, who had barely acknowledged Hannah's existence since Jonathan's death, were treating Wyatt with respect bordering on deference. Meanwhile, several of the church ladies had surrounded Hannah, their curiosity thinly veiled as concern. "He seems very capable," Mrs. Burton commented, watching Wyatt. "How fortunate you found such help." "Yes, very capable," Hannah agreed. "Mr. West has been a godsend." "And staying in your bunkhouse, I understand?" Mrs. Peterson asked, her tone carefully neutral. Hannah met her gaze directly. "That's correct. My ranch was Jonathan's pride, and I couldn't bear to see it fail. Mr. West's expertise has been invaluable." The women exchanged glances, but something in Hannah's dignified response seemed to give them pause. Before the interrogation could continue, Wyatt appeared at her side. "Ladies," he greeted them with a tip of his hat. "I hope you don't mind if I steal Mrs. Atwell away. We promised to visit Mrs. Grayson on our way home." Edith Grayson was the elderly widow who lived at the edge of town, largely forgotten by the community since her husband's passing 5 years earlier. The mention of her name caused visible discomfort among the women who had neglected their Christian duty to the old woman. "Of course," Mrs. Peterson said quickly. "Please give her our regards." As they walked away, Hannah whispered, "We didn't plan to visit Edith." "We do now," Wyatt replied with a wink. "Never hurts to remind people of their own shortcomings when they're busy judging others." Hannah laughed, a genuine sound that turned more heads than their entrance had. "You're surprisingly devious for such an honest man." "I prefer strategic," Wyatt grinned. "Besides, Mrs. Grayson could probably use the company, and some of those apple preserves you made last week." They did visit Edith Grayson, bringing her preserves and staying for tea in her dusty parlor. The old woman was clearly delighted by the unexpected company, her roomy eyes brightening as Hannah promised to return the following week. "You're a good woman, Hannah Atwell," Edith said as they prepared to leave. "Jonathan would be proud of how you've carried on." Her gaze shifted to Wyatt, assessing. "And you, young man, you look at her the way a man should look at a woman. My Harold looked at me that way for 42 years. Wyatt smiled, helping the elderly woman to her feet. "Mrs. Atwell is easy to admire, madam, HMPH." "More than admiration in those eyes," Edith declared with the frankness of the very old. "Don't waste time, either of you. Life's shorter than you think." On the drive home, Hannah was quieter than usual, Edith's words echoing in her mind. Beside her, Wyatt seemed similarly contemplative. "Penny for your thoughts," he finally asked as the ranch came into view. Hannah hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I was thinking about what Mrs. Grayson said, about not wasting time." Wyatt's hand covered hers on the reins. "I've been thinking the same." That evening, after a simple supper, Wyatt surprised Hannah by asking for her journal again. "Would you read me another poem?" he requested, his manner almost shy. Hannah retrieved the leather-bound book, settling beside him on the porch swing. She turned to a page she'd written just days before, her heart pounding as she began to read. "I thought my heart was finished with its yearning, settled into quiet, like embers banking low. Then came an unexpected breeze, returning life to flames I'd thought would never grow. Should I fear this warmth, this sudden burning, or embrace the light, let caution go? Time is precious, there's no returning to moments past, chances never known." When she finished, Hannah couldn't meet Wyatt's eyes, afraid of what she might see or not see reflected there. "Hannah," he said softly, lifting her chin with gentle fingers. "Look at me." She raised her eyes to find his filled with emotion, blue depths swimming with something that made her breath catch. "I love you," Wyatt said simply. "I know it's fast, I know people will say we're being foolish. But I've lived enough to recognize truth when I find it. And the truth is, I love you more than I thought possible after Catherine." Tears blurred Hannah's vision. "I love you too," she whispered, the words both terrifying and liberating. "God help me, I do." Wyatt gathered her into his arms, his kiss deeper and more urgent than those they'd shared before. Hannah responded with equal fervor, years of loneliness and longing pouring into their embrace. When they finally parted, both breathless, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said, the words somewhere between a question and a declaration. "Not someday, not when people stop talking. Soon. I don't want to sleep in that bunkhouse another night, wondering if you're lonely in this big house by yourself." Hannah laughed softly, even as tears spilled down her cheeks. "People will say you're marrying me for the ranch. Let them. We'll know the truth. They'll say I'm desperate, clinging to a younger man before it's too late." Wyatt kissed away a tear from her cheek. "1 year hardly makes me a younger man, And if you're desperate, what does that make me? I'm the one proposing after barely a month." Hannah searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity. "Are you sure, Wyatt? Truly sure? I'm not the same woman I was at 20. I have scars inside and out." "And I can't give you children, Hannah," Wyatt interrupted gently. "I'm not the same man I was at 26 either. We've both lived, lost, learned. Those experiences have shaped us into who we are today, the people who found each other against all odds." His hands framed her face. "As for children, I meant what I said before. If it's just us, that's enough. If someday we want to open our home to a child who needs one, we can discuss it then." The thoughtfulness of his response, the way he had clearly considered their future together, melted the last of Hannah's reservations. "Yes," she said, her heart full to bursting. "Yes, I'll marry you, Wyatt West." His answering smile was brighter than the setting sun. "How soon can Reverend Clark be persuaded to perform a ceremony? Eager are we," Hannah teased, her arms looped around his neck, "to make you my wife." "Absolutely." Wyatt's eyes darkened with promise. "I've been a gentleman sleeping in that bunkhouse, Hannah. My patience has limits." His honesty made her blush and laugh at once. 2 weeks, she decided. Long enough to have the banns read, short enough to quiet any inappropriate speculation about our living arrangements. 2 weeks it is, Wyatt agreed, sealing the bargain with another kiss. The news of their engagement spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. Reactions were mixed, from genuine congratulations to poorly concealed disapproval. Thomas and Lucinda were predictably outraged, cornering Hannah in the mercantile just days after the announcement. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Thomas demanded, his face mottled with anger. "Marrying a drifter you've known for a month. Jonathan would be turning in his grave. Jonathan would want me to be happy," Hannah replied calmly, selecting fabric for her wedding dress. "Wyatt makes me happy. He wants the ranch," Lucinda hissed. "Can't you see that? He's using you." Hannah turned to face them both, her patience exhausted. "The ranch will remain in my name after the marriage. Wyatt insisted on it. He's purchasing the Jenkins property to the north with his own savings. That's where we'll expand." She smiled at their shocked expressions. "He's also been hired by 3 local ranchers as a water management consultant. Turns out his skills are in high demand, so you see, he doesn't need my property or my money." Thomas sputtered, clearly thrown by this information. "It's still inappropriate." "The age difference, 1 year," Hannah interrupted. "Wyatt is 1 year younger than me, Thomas, hardly scandalous." "But you can't have children," Lucinda blurted, then covered her mouth as if she hadn't meant to speak so plainly. The cruel reminder stung, but Hannah refused to show it. "Wyatt is aware of that. He loves me anyway," a concept you both seem to find incomprehensible. Leaving them speechless, Hannah completed her purchases and departed with her head high. For the first time since Jonathan's death, she felt truly confident in her decisions, regardless of others' opinions. The wedding took place on a crisp October morning, with the mountains ablaze in autumn colors. Despite the short notice and lingering gossip, the small church was surprisingly full. Edith Grayson sat in the front pew, her withered face beaming with approval. The ranchers who had sought Wyatt's expertise were present with their wives, as were several of Hannah's neighbors who had watched her struggle alone for years. Thomas and Lucinda did not attend, their absence a silent protest that bothered Hannah less than she would have expected. When Hannah walked down the aisle in a simple gown of blue silk, carrying wildflowers from her own meadow, she saw only Wyatt waiting for her at the altar. His expression as she approached wonder, love, and unmistakable pride banished any lingering doubts. Reverend Clark, who had initially been hesitant about the hasty marriage, had warmed to the couple during their premarital counseling. He conducted the ceremony with genuine warmth, his words about second chances and God's timing bringing tears to many eyes. "I, Wyatt, take thee, Hannah, to be my wedded wife," Wyatt vowed, his voice steady and sure. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death us do part," according to God's holy ordinance. And thereto I plight thee my troth." When Hannah repeated the vows, her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes never left Wyatt's. The simple gold band he placed on her finger had belonged to his mother. He'd told her, a woman who had also known hardship and perseverance. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Clark declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Wyatt's kiss was restrained but tender, mindful of their audience yet leaving no doubt of his feelings. As they turned to face the congregation, Hannah was surprised by the genuine applause that greeted them. Even Mrs. Peterson was dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food contributed by many of the guests. Wyatt had spent the previous week building a proper dance floor under the large oak tree and hired musicians from the next town over to provide music. As evening fell, lanterns were lit, casting a golden glow over the gathering. Wyatt led Hannah onto the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife, holding her close as they swayed to a gentle waltz. "Are you happy, Mrs. West?" he murmured against her ear. Hannah smiled at the new name, her heart full to bursting. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she admitted. "And you, any regrets about marrying the scandalous widow Atwell?" Wyatt's arms tightened around her. "Only that I didn't find you sooner." Later, after the guests had departed and they were finally alone, Wyatt carried Hannah across the threshold of the house that was now truly their home. The nervousness Hannah had expected to feel was tempered by the absolute rightness of being in his arms. "Welcome home, husband," she whispered against his lips. "Home," Wyatt repeated, gazing into her eyes with wonder. "I've been searching for it for 8 years without knowing what I was looking for. It wasn't a place at all. It was you, Hannah. You're my home." In the soft lamplight of the bedroom that had once felt so empty, Hannah and Wyatt discovered each other fully for the first time. There was tenderness and passion, laughter and tears, the joining of two souls who had known loss and found unexpected joy in each other's arms. As Hannah drifted to sleep in the protective circle of her husband's embrace, she marveled at how life could change so completely in the space of a few months. From a lonely widow facing failure to a beloved wife with renewed purpose, the transformation seemed almost miraculous. "What are you thinking about?" Wyatt asked drowsily, pressing a kiss to her bare shoulder. Hannah smiled in the darkness. "About answered prayers, even the ones I was too afraid to whisper." Spring came to the ranch with unprecedented vigor. Under Wyatt's careful management, the expanded property flourished. The cattle herd had doubled, the crops were thriving with the improved irrigation system, and Hannah's vegetable garden produced abundantly. They had hired 2 young cowboys to help with the increased workload, lodging them in the bunkhouse that Wyatt had vacated to become Hannah's husband. Their marriage had settled into a rhythm of shared work and deep companionship. Hannah still wrote her poetry, now with Wyatt's enthusiastic encouragement. He had built her a small desk near the window where she could write while watching the mountains change with the seasons. One evening in May, as they sat on the porch after supper, Hannah handed Wyatt a leather-bound journal, new and pristine, unlike her own worn volume. "What's this?" he asked, turning it over in his hands. "I thought you might want to write your own thoughts," Hannah explained. "You listen so patiently to my poetry. Perhaps you have stories of your own to tell." Wyatt looked touched by the gesture. "I'm not much of a writer. Neither was I until I started," Hannah smiled. "Just thoughts, memories you want to preserve for us and maybe someday." She hesitated, then continued, "For whoever comes after us, our legacy, as you called it." Understanding dawned in Wyatt's eyes. "Our legacy," he repeated softly, drawing her close. "I like the sound of that." 2 days later, Sheriff Miller rode out to the ranch with news that silenced the last of the town's gossip. Thomas Atwell had been arrested for fraud and embezzlement. His dealings with the bank revealed to be considerably less honest than he'd portrayed. Several local ranchers, including Wyatt and Hannah, had been cheated out of fair prices for their cattle through Thomas's manipulations of the market. He'll likely serve time, the sheriff informed them grimly. Lucinda's already left for her sister's place in Denver. Said she couldn't face the shame. After the sheriff departed, Hannah sat in stunned silence. I never thought, I knew Thomas was ambitious, but this, Wyatt took her hand. Are you all right? I know he's still your family, despite everything. Hannah considered the question carefully. I'm sad for him. For the man Jonathan thought he was, or hoped he could be, but I can't say I'm surprised, not really. Thomas always wanted more than he had, always thought he deserved better. Unlike someone else I know, Wyatt observed, who appreciated what she had and fought to keep it, even when it would have been easier to give up. Hannah leaned against his shoulder, grateful for his steady presence. We make quite a pair, don't we? Both a little broken, both a little wiser for it. Not broken, Wyatt corrected gently. Just refined by fire like good steel. In June, they received an unexpected visitor. A wagon arrived carrying a young woman with 2 small children, a boy of about 5 and a girl no more than 3. Hannah didn't recognize her at first, but Wyatt's sharp intake of breath told her he did. Mary, he said, moving forward uncertainly. Mary Ellis, the woman nodded, exhaustion evident in her pale face. Hello, Wyatt, it's been a long time. Hannah watched as Wyatt helped the woman down from the wagon, his manner courteous but confused. Hannah, this is Mary Ellis, Catherine's younger sister. Mary, my wife, Hannah. Mary's eyes widened slightly at the introduction, but she offered a tired smile. Mrs. West. I'm sorry to arrive unannounced. I didn't know where else to go. Hannah stepped forward, noting the dark circles under the young woman's eyes and the threadbare quality of the children's clothing. You're welcome here, Mary. Please come inside. You all must be hungry after your journey. Over a simple meal, Mary's story emerged. Her husband had died in a mining accident in Colorado 6 months earlier, leaving her penniless with 2 young children. She'd been working as a laundress but could barely make ends meet. I remembered you mentioned Montana in your last letter, she told Wyatt. It took some doing to find exactly where, but folks in Silver Creek directed me here. She looked down at her plate. I don't mean to impose. Just a few days' rest before we continue north to my uncle's place. You're not imposing, Hannah assured her, her heart going out to the young widow. She knew all too well the fear and uncertainty Mary must be feeling. Later, after Mary and the children had been settled in the spare bedroom, Wyatt and Hannah spoke privately in their room. I should have written to her after Catherine died, Wyatt said, regret evident in his voice. She was only 16, then I wasn't thinking clearly after losing Catherine and the baby. Hannah touched his cheek gently. You can't blame yourself, you were grieving. Wyatt nodded, though the guilt remained in his eyes. Those children, Hannah. The boy, James, reminds me so much of Catherine, same eyes, same serious expression. Hannah had noticed it too, the resemblance between the solemn 5-year-old and the woman in the small daguerreotype Wyatt kept in his desk drawer. Mary said they're heading to her uncle's place, but she didn't seem enthusiastic about it. Uncle Morris, Wyatt explained. Stern man, very religious, never approved of Mary's husband, called him a wastrel and refused to help them when they married. He sighed. I can't imagine he'll be welcoming now. Hannah was quiet for a moment, considering. Then, what if they stayed here? Wyatt looked at her in surprise. Here. With us, we have the room, Hannah pointed out. The ranch is prospering. Mary could help with the household. The children could attend school in town when they're old enough. She took Wyatt's hands in hers. They're Catherine's family, Wyatt, your family, in a way. Wyatt searched her face. Hannah, are you sure? Taking in a woman and 2 children isn't a small undertaking. I'm sure, Hannah said firmly. Remember what you told me about the Cheyenne. Family is who you choose to love. She smiled softly. I think maybe they're part of our legacy, Wyatt, if you want them to be. The gratitude and love that flooded Wyatt's expression was answer enough. He gathered Hannah in his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. How did I get so lucky? He murmured against her hair. You truly are the answer to every prayer I never dared speak. The next morning, they presented their offer to Mary. The young woman's stunned disbelief quickly gave way to grateful tears. "I can't accept such charity," she protested weakly. "It's not charity," Hannah assured her. "The ranch needs another pair of hands, and the children deserve a stable home. We would be helping each other." Mary looked between them, hope warring with pride on her tired face. "Are you certain? The children can be handful, and we're certain," Wyatt said firmly. "This is your home now if you want it to be." The decision transformed the ranch almost overnight. The house, which had sometimes felt too large for just the two of them, now rang with children's laughter. James, serious and thoughtful like his aunt had been, followed Wyatt everywhere, soaking up knowledge about horses and cattle. Little Emma, sunny and curious, became Hannah's shadow in the garden and kitchen. Mary proved to be a skilled seamstress, and within months had established a small business making and altering clothes for the women of Silver Creek. The extra income allowed her to maintain her independence while contributing to the household. By Christmas, it was hard to remember a time when the four of them hadn't been a family. The house was decorated with pine boughs and homemade ornaments, the children's excitement infectious as they helped Hannah bake cookies, and Wyatt cut a perfect tree from their own land. On Christmas Eve, after the children had finally fallen asleep, Wyatt and Hannah sat before the fire, sharing a rare moment alone. "Happy?" Wyatt asked, his arm around his wife's shoulders. Hannah nodded, watching the flames dance. "More than I ever thought possible. You?" "Complete," Wyatt replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Hannah tilted her face up to his. "Do you ever regret it, marrying an older woman who couldn't give you children of your own?" Wyatt's expression grew serious. "Hannah, look around you. We have a thriving ranch, a beautiful home, two amazing children who call us aunt and uncle but look at us like we hang the moon." His eyes held her steadily. "And I have you, brilliant, brave, beautiful you." "How could I possibly have regrets? I love you, Wyatt West," Hannah whispered, resting her head on his shoulder. "And I love you, Hannah West," he replied, the name still bringing a smile to both their faces. "Till the end of my days and beyond." As the fire crackled and snow began to fall outside, Hannah thought about the journal she'd been keeping, chronicling their unlikely love story. Perhaps someday, long after they were gone, someone would read it and understand how two broken people had found wholeness together, how love had bloomed against all odds in the harsh beauty of the Montana wilderness. Perhaps they would understand that age was just a number, that family was what you made it, and that sometimes the answer to your deepest prayers came in the form you least expected. For now, though, Hannah was content to live their story day by day, embraced by the love of the man who had seen her value when others saw only her years, the man who had called her the answer to his every prayer. And in the quiet of her heart, Hannah knew he was the answer to hers as well.